Hey, friend. Welcome back to Real Estate Investing for Life. I am so glad you're here. If you're listening to this in real time, it's the end of August and kids have been back in school for a little bit. And hopefully, you're all feeling like this fresh start mentality, which I absolutely love as we round the corner into September. I know I've mentioned that before, but I am super excited just to have an authentic conversation with you today about the power of one or two conversations and about how they can really change everything. I wanted to make sure you know before we get too much further down the episode that if you're in the state of Idaho or live anywhere near the state of Idaho, you're going to want to be at Idaho REIN, which is our second annual statewide real estate investing conference. It is October 9th with a beautiful pre-party being held the night before by Idaho REIN. You're not going to want to miss it. And the great news is you can take note of this right now and get your ticket by going to Idaho REIN, Idaho REICON.com, grabbing your ticket, and be sure to use the promo code Jonna10, Jonna 10, to grab 10% off. And your pre-party is included in that if you get your tickets now. Let's get on with the show, but I wanted to make sure you had that information. So let's talk about this power of just one conversation. And I was thinking about, as it relates to attending a conference or a retreat or a meetup or anything like that, how sometimes the things that come out of it have nothing to do with what you think is going to come out of it. And I have a couple of examples of this, but I look back to a time when I was just getting started in my real estate investing journey. We had a couple of rentals at the time. I was trying to figure out what to do with them. I didn't know where to take things next. I was teaching school part-time at the time. My husband was on a big business trip, a lot of that year, actually. And we were figuring it out. And I had come across this little website, which was not little, but it was littler than it is today at the time, called BiggerPockets. And I found out about this real estate conference. The very first conference they were ever going to have was going to happen in about 3 or 4 months from then. And it was in Denver, Colorado. So I went on faith. I took a couple of days leave. I went down there, grabbed myself a ticket, didn't have a business or anything like that or business cards, but I just went down there. And I've spoken about that in prior shows. I'll try and link to a show note for when I really went into that detailed information. But one thing that I was thinking about recently that I have not talked about is a happenstance kind of thing that happened is I met someone who at the time worked at BiggerPockets, and I think we just had a very minimal conversation and we traded socials. That's the way that I recall it. And then not too long after that, it was definitely within the year, I got contacted to be a guest on the BiggerPockets podcast after he had seen that we had dipped our toes into real estate investing. And I was thinking about the thread and how this all happened. And I went to this conference on complete faith. I was there just to observe and learn what real people were doing with real estate investing and just to see if it's something that actually worked. Because I had been surrounded by a lot of naysayers in my life that really were anti-real estate investments and didn't believe that it worked and that it was just completely too risky. So, when you're getting like talked down by people and you feel like they are making you think that you're kind of crazy, that's kind of how I felt. Like I would share my enthusiasm for the idea of starting to invest in real estate, and people are like, okay, that's good for you. I got one comment of, you might as well be throwing your money away. I got one comment of, oh man, I would never do that. I do not want to get stuck fixing toilets and getting those calls at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? I got called materialistic. Guess I wanted to build additional income sources. So there was a lot kind of going against me as far as negative noise. And I wanted to get in the room with other people that were thinking along the same line of thoughts as my husband and I were, that there was something to this real estate investing thing and that we could earn potentially some additional forms of income and diversify our income streams, okay? So I went down to this conference, had this very cursory contact with somebody. Truth be told, I don't even remember his name, but he worked for BiggerPockets for a short time, and that's how we connected. And then he reached out the next year for me to be on the BiggerPockets podcast after the podcast had gotten launched. And it's funny, I look back at that moment and that time frame. We're talking, this was 2014, I think. And I got on the show, and the hosts were Brandon Turner, and many of you may know him from all over social media, and he's a very influential real estate investor now. But he was just getting started then as an employee at BiggerPockets. And then the other person was Josh Dorkin, who is the founder of BiggerPockets.com and who since sold the company and seems to be living the good life in Hawaii. So good for Josh. But I got on there, and I feel like it's probably imposter syndrome, but I feel still to this day a little bit like I got on the show and Josh was kind of like, who put this girl on here? So it's probably in my head, but the way that his reaction is and his dry sense of humor, that's kind of how I was feeling as I was recorded. And then definitely when I heard the analysis of my episode after it came out, I wasn't so confident in myself at that time. But long story short, the podcast was an incredible opportunity, and it actually launched my real estate agent business because I had so many investors reach out to me over the years who had found me through BiggerPockets and wanted to invest in the Idaho real estate market. And through that several years after the podcast, a huge part of my real estate business was working directly with investors, some extremely successful and extremely experienced, and some just getting started. And it was beautiful because the ones that had been really experienced, I learned so much from them as I was going on my own investing journey. And then the ones that were brand new, I was way ahead of them and I could lead them into a great real estate investment. So that is one thing that came out of going to this one conference as an attendee with no speaking agenda, no outside curricular activities planned at that conference. And then out of that, ultimately the podcast, I became a moderator at BiggerPockets, and I got introduced to some of the most prolific investors in the space of that time, and even led to, I spent several years in a mastermind with investors that have gone on to do a lot of things in our investing world. And I know it's maybe sounding like a stretch, but see, I never would have created the Idaho Real Estate Investor Network or the portfolio I did today if I hadn't been to that conference. I know that. I mean, I can tell you that with certainty because I think if I wouldn't have just made the decision, pulled the trigger, bought that, it was probably a $500 ticket at the time, I don't remember, and jumped on the plane and gone down there, I think real estate investing probably would have just been a blip in our life and something that was kind of fun to try and figure out one or two properties and move on. I really do. I think that what it did is it normalized the fact that there were other people like us out there, other real estate investors. And then beyond that, I'm not even talking about like the content of the actual conference, which I could talk about. I'm not talking about the fact that I sat in one room where I found out that people from stage were talking about how everyone is going to know Boise, Idaho in 5 years. And I was the only person from Idaho in the entire room. And I sensed that opportunity. It ultimately led to my career of getting my real estate license. I'm talking about just the fact that I made one random connection with somebody whose name I do not remember today. I probably will remember it by the time this airs, and maybe I can put it in the notes, but who worked for BiggerPockets for a short time, who connected me that somehow I got invited to be on the BiggerPockets podcast, and it truly changed the trajectory of my life. So that is why I say one conversation can change everything. And as I'm recording this, the timing is such that everyone listening, if you're listening to this in real time, you have the opportunity to attend Idaho REIN, which again is October 9th with our pre-party on October 8th. And Carrie and Senate Eskridge are the planners of this conference. Idaho REIN is a co-host, and I'm fortunate enough to be speaking there. I'm really excited. I'm already working on my messaging for that day. But they are putting in front of this conference some of the most talented speakers that are coming in their areas of expertise. And I guarantee you, one right piece of advice from one of these speakers is going to impact you positively enough to more than cover the cost of the very reasonable ticket. So if you've been considering doing something like this, I would say there's no better opportunity that if you're in the state of Idaho, that you jump into your local conference. If you're in Southern Idaho, you don't even have to fly. Northern Idaho either. But really, if you're close, if you can stay at your own home and attend a powerful one night and day conference, you are going to thank yourselves for doing so. And you're not going just for information. In fact, I would say don't go if you're just looking for information. You need to be prepared to receive more than that. You're receiving a atmosphere that normalizes what you're interested in doing. You are receiving a plethora of resources all in one day. It can't be all about content anymore. There is so much content out there. You're listening to content right now, but there's YouTube, there's books, there's AI, there's podcasts, there's all kinds of people coming to town and pitching their strategies. There are local meetups galore beyond Idaho REIN where you could go and get some content, but you are attending to get in the right room with the right people, having the right conversations. And I wouldn't go into it with such a black and white structure, like I have to get everything figured out by the end of the day. It's not for that. It's for absorbing the atmosphere where everybody is in their journey and learning from them. And most importantly, having those conversations. And so if you're at Idaho Recon or a conference like it, I encourage you to not go run in the bathroom during the breaks. Make sure you're connecting with at least one person during those breaks. Get out there, meet the sponsors and the people that are supporting organizations like what we have here in Idaho, and making sure that you are trading information with key people. I know there's something so powerful about that. BiggerPockets conference that I attended back many years ago is just one example. I've been to countless summits, conferences, retreats, you name it. And I can pull out of here probably 10 stories of one conversation I've had at each one that has greatly impacted my life. Maybe I'll cover some of those in a different episode. But for today, be encouraged. Come with open ears, open arms, and join us at Idaho Recon. We cannot wait to see you there. And thank you for listening. If you have questions specifically about it, you are welcome to reach out to me. My website is jonnaweber.com. Send in a contact request with some questions and we'll answer them right away because we want to see you in that room. Have an amazing day, go and grow, and we'll catch you on the next episode.